that something is trying to go through. Okay. Like this. I mean, I should not be on that page, right? I am on that. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Okay, it looks like YouTube is live now. Good. Holy heck. Okay, good. And now... Yeah, actually, it's funny, because I didn't, first time I've seen this video, I had no idea what was in this video at all. I like Damage. Their other stuff has been pretty good so far. I wasn't anticipating the F slur, so I'm sorry if that offended anybody. I was not aware that an F slur was incoming. Otherwise, I would have given a chat some kind of heads up. But I was just looking at a video. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. I was just looking at this video and considering whether I wanted to spend any time checking this out. But it's Slavoj Zizek. There is nothing inherently revolutionary in transgenderism, right? It was just in there. And I think that I agree with you, Jane, that there's well, I don't know. Let me think. I like the idea of empowering people and making people feel empowered, and I believe that that's the intention with what that video is trying to do. That there's, rather than making a strong claim, it's trying to make people feel empowered. But I think that there might be a better way. Right. It's not necessary to put anybody or any group up over and above in order for us to empower them. And that is clearly the message that's being conveyed there, that there are no greater spiritual leaders on the whole planet, right? Like it's a really, really sweeping statement that, again, I believe probably has good intentions, but is being too grandiose. And again, it's putting a group up over and above. And this is, you're very astute for catching that right off the rip. This is a common thing that I have to prepare students for, warn students about. It's a conversation that I often have to have with students who are writing about any kind of gender rights, gender liberation, or gender oppression, because there is a prevailing tendency, and this might have to do with, I was going to say, might have to do with early feminist writings, but really I don't think that now that I've thought about it for a second, it's more likely due to preconceived perceptions that people have about feminism. It's advocating for women, and students sometimes accidentally, right? They accidentally create this dynamic where it's tit for tat, or this or that, or one or the other, and where we're trying to lift up women in the effort of students trying to lift up women. They're putting them on a pedestal and creating this unhelpful comparison where, right, where rights are being contrasted against the rights of other people, rather than women's liberation being tied to expanding rights for everyone, because that's what feminism is trying to do, is trying to expand everyone's rights for everyone. All the rights. We want to expand all of the rights. And so there's, I think that there's, well, it is a false dichotomy, but it's more than a false dichotomy. A step further, it's reducing being to binary thinking. In the box or not in the box, right? With binary thinking, one of the things that human brains often does automatically is it evaluates one above the other, right? There's this is how we evaluate things that are good in the world, right? We make judgments about better or best, right? When we have these two categories. And so it's forcing binary thinking, or enforcing binary thinking, which implies right or wrong, good or bad, better or best, right? This vying kind of organization, I think, necessarily. Also, hi, I hope you're doing well, James. Good to see you. Also, Poor Boy Soul, good to see you. Appreciate the lurk. Hope you have a good day. And we'll see how long we can keep this stream going. There was a snowstorm this morning, and we were supposed to get more weather. Right now it's kind of clear, but it wouldn't surprise me if within the next hour or two a snowstorm blows in and completely obliterates my ability to, even with my hotspot, it would be spotty at best in a snowstorm. From my experience, anyways. Sometimes I get good connection, but usually not. Welcome in, Street Cat Love. It's excellent to see you. I hope you're having a good day. Good. Oh, and that reminds me, there was before we get into what we want to talk about today, we'll still be talking about ontology. We'll still be because I kind of opened up a can of worms in the end of last stream, and if we want to continue with that can of worms, cool. Especially with the conversation that we were having with regard to sex and sexual identity, gender identity. These things are important ontological questions, which if you all are not prepared to continue that conversation right off the rip, we will probably end up back in that conversation later today anyway, as part of the stuff that I have planned for today. And for me to do that, I'm going to crack into some Philosophy 101 stuff. It'll be a little bit of a refresher for me. As when I was talking about ontology on stream Friday, I made a mistake about some of the philosophers that I was talking about. Well, I'll talk about correcting that in a little bit today. So that's why we need to crack into the Philosophy 101 stuff. I'm going to pull up my lecture that I teach for, with my Philosophy 101 students. And that's what I've got on the agenda for today. But before I do that, there's some clarification I think that I would like to make. We were having some conversations. I can't remember what quite brought it up, but we were talking about how some people on the left have a tendency to valorize or to idolize countries or individuals. Right? History doesn't have any good guys. That's what we were talking about. My point is that history doesn't have any good guys. And Street Cat Love coming in reminded me of this conversation that we were having, because Street Cat Love does have a cute Mao emote, right? And Mao emotes is one of the things that I specifically brought up, and I wanted to be clear about what I mean, right? Mao is not a bad person for us to have emotes of, for us to have for us to look to, right? There are lots of things that Mao did good and right and were successful. There were some things that aren't so great, right? And what I'm trying to be metered about that, right? And I don't want to. Thank you for shouting out. Welcome in, Matt. It's good to see you, right? Street Cat Love isn't doing anything wrong from having a Mao emo, right? And that's certainly not the point that I was trying to make, or an idea that I would like to get across at all. But that we, as leftists, should accept that there are no good guys. There are no good guys in history. There are no good guys in imperialism. There are no good guys in capitalism. There are no good guys in electoralism. There are no good guys. Period. We can look to certain people who serve as models that represent certain ideas, and Mao is a fantastic example that has a lot of really great writings, that has a lot of really great insight on how to be successful in forging a revolution. He did that successfully, right? And there's lots of stuff that we should want to take in from that. And having the emotes, right, is a quick and easy way to convey a lot of idea. This is a carry-on of the conversation that we were talking about with jargon, right? In some spaces, we can still use the dense leftist jargon of the theorists, right? We can get into the structure and superstructure, and we can talk about the means ends unity, and we can talk about all of these terms in certain spaces. But in certain other contexts, using this kind of language can be alienating. It can limit our ability to communicate. So we need to be thoughtful and mindful about how we use our language, how we express certain ideas, and when certain things are appropriate. So that we use those kinds of terms, or we use that kind of language for a shorthand, right? And we don't want to have to explain everything all of the time. Right? And the example I gave was the Jakarta method. Right. This is something that is really quickly, I can say, the Jakarta method. And people who are familiar with what it is, there's a whole world of context that immediately is conveyed with just a simple utterance. And memes, or not memes, but emotes do the same thing. Emotes convey a huge amount of information, lots of ideas and lots of concepts that don't require a lot of explanation, right? So that they're very advantageous, they're very good, but the thing that I was specifically drawing attention to is that sometimes the way that they get used ends up being like an oversimplification. What's the word? It's reductive, right? That people, the complexities of the people or the concepts or the ideas get flattened. And that is something that I see in leftist spaces, right? Stalin is a better example, and that's the one that I should have used on Friday's stream. When people use Stalin, there's lots of appropriate ways to use Stalin, but I see Stalin used in a lot of really ways that just aren't really helpful, that are tanky. And I don't want to use that word because I'm kind of a tanky, and I don't mind the word tanky, but I think you all know, right, that the LMs who are accelerationists or who are not opposed to authoritarian methods to attaining attaining our ends. Oh, Dark Vadrion, yeah, welcome in. Long time no see. I hope you're doing well. Good. Yeah, Stalin was also an authoritarian, and that's what I mean. It's like when in it. There is a nuance for us to talk about Stalin, right? There is some reason for us to talk about Stalin and some of the pros and cons, right? Stalin had some good ideas, some good theories, so there is some reason for us to refer to him and to talk about him. But again, there are spaces where the nuance gets flattened. And it comes off as adoration. And then you have a whole bunch of people who are all putting a bunch of Stalin faces in chat. And for those people who don't get the context, it feels like all of a sudden everybody got really authoritarian in here, right? So what I'm saying is maybe we ought to be a little bit more mindful about how we think about terms and jargon and the use of imagery, especially emotes and those kinds of things. Or Chairman Meow. If I get a cat, I will likely name them Mao Zedong. Good. Or Chairman Meow. Yeah, and I think authoritarianism was one of the reasons why we were talking about it in the first place. And nationalism, actually, that's the other thing, right? It's because we don't want to say China good. We don't want to play into China bad narrative, right? So, and there's some nuance to be had here and a balance that we have to walk. Because we don't want to engage in the China bad narrative that is part of the USA imperial machine, right? That China bad, Venezuela bad. That's why we can do the things that we do despite international law. And that's kind of what I'm trying to help temper, right? Is that when with certain kinds of imagery, we draw attention, right? We should talk about how China has done a good job of eliminating homelessness and does a great job of providing health care and how most of their people are fed. But we should also not stop talking about the fact that they are still engaged in imperialism around the globe. They are still engaged in commercial extraction of natural resources from third world countries. The same as all of the other industrialized imperialist nations, right? And we should be able to have conversations about China without being put into a category or camp or, that we are saying China good or China bad. There are no good guys. There are no good guys in history or in politics or in... There are no good guys. Life is complicated. People are complex. There is nuance to every situation. Things aren't good or bad. Is the long and skinny. Yeah, and I think that we should all completely reject authoritarianism, right? That's in not to be dogmatic, and that's kind of well, that's not being dogmatic. A rejection of authoritarianism isn't dogmatic in the same way that a rejection of Nazism isn't dogmatic, or right, a rejection of fascists is something that it is dogmatic, but it's it's one of those identity by exclusion, things, right? I believe if you think that leftism and authoritarianism can work together, I believe that you are categorically mistaken about one of those things, right? That in the same way that I have trouble understanding how people can be anarcho-capitalists. You misunderstand one of those things categorically, in my view, right? So they have a monopoly on billionaire power through force, not accountability for morality. Right, exactly. What they do to Africa makes it hard to talk to leftists who see China as nothing but good. Right, and that's right. There's a lot of nuance and context to be had there. Right, it is absolutely undeniable that the kind of deals that China is offering to Africa are way better than the kind of deals that they have ever gotten from the United States or any of the other Western imperialist powers. But that doesn't make those deals good. It's still a deliberate, systematic commitment to the status quo, to capitalism, to right, and there might be some kind of argument here. I don't think there is, but there might be some kind of argument here for, well, if perhaps China is trying to destabilize the hegemony of capitalism as it exists. Well, that's fine, but what they are doing by destabilizing that hegemony is creating a new hegemony of capitalistic power. Undeniably, sure, they're disrupting the hegemony, but only to create a new now capitalist hegemony, and that's not what we want to support. That's not what we want to endorse. That's not good. That's not good, right? Hey, welcome in, Nova Rider. Under Adolf Trump. Well, it's terrible. Trump is a pretty average president for America. And that's something that I saw it was on Facebook, and I want to say it was U.S. Socialist for Bernie or something, who sometimes pops up on my feed, and it was just like Barack Obama was the best president of my lifetime, and I'm like, you don't fucking get it. No, no. Not only not the best, Obama was evil. They have all been terrible and awful and evil. There are no good United States presidents. Carter was the least shitty, right? But still a war criminal. Still maintained the wars that we had ongoing. Didn't start any new wars, which is unusual for a United States president, for them to not have begun any new wars during their term, but it's still evil, right? Still not somebody that we can hold up, put on a pedestal, or consider a hero at all, right? At all. But still a settler colony. Yeah. Authoritarian methods will never get us to socialism, let alone communism. And that's absolutely true, Jane. It just cannot. And I get that not everybody has a solid understanding of means ends unity, right? But well, I mean, I think that, well, okay, so just because tactics haven't worked in the past doesn't mean that those tactics that have failed in the past can't work in different material conditions. So first off, there's that. But when we have seen over and over and over again attempts to top down authoritarian establishment of socialist policies, we've seen this. We've seen what happens. It doesn't work. It doesn't. It's not gonna work. Just stop trying. Just accept that ship has that road has been tried. We have tried that road. Let's try a different route, right? Like, come on. Why are we still having this conversation? Even William Henry Harrison perpetrated the Trail of Tears. Yep. But there are no good United States presidents. There are no good United States presidents. They are all evil demons. FDR and the internet, concentration camps, right? And internment, yeah, internment, concentration camps. There are no good guys. So right, so we are continuing on this conversation of ontology today. Let me make a clarification. First thing, right off the rip, when I was talking about ontological priority, in fact, no, not that one. It's here, I think. No, where's the... That's definitely not it. Okay, it doesn't matter. What we were talking about is ontological priority, whether or not it was, right? So let me reframe this. People perceive the world in one of two ways. Either one identifies objects in the world and then attributes characteristics or properties to the identity that they have recognized in the world. Or they recognize properties of the world and then organize those properties into unities that they then recognize as identities. So humans perceive the world in one of two ways. Either they perceive identities in the world and then attribute identity properties to them, or people see a bundle of impressions or a bundle of properties, organizes those things together intellectually to form an identity. And the reason why I was focusing in on this is color blindness is I think a way that really illustrates the judgment steps that I'm concerned with here. When people pretend that they don't see color, when people pretend they are colorblind, they perceive somebody in the world. They recognize that somebody is having certain kinds of properties and characteristics, and then they do extra work to add more filters on to how they perceive the subject. And the concern that I'm kind of trying to touch on here is that humans, persons have the ability to perceive other persons and not recognize that other person's personhood. And what I'm trying to figure out, right, the truth that I'm trying to get to, is it the case that people see other people and then do this filtering thing where they add a bunch of extra steps, and the adding of the extra steps strips away that person's personhood? Or is it the case that those people see an identity out in the world and don't recognize that identity as having properties which make that identity a person? That's the issue that I'm most concerned with here, and why I keep bringing this issue up. Why we're still going on about. So that's while you're all mulling that over. And this, we're going to be talking about this for a while, probably. I don't think that we're anywhere near getting to figure this out. While you all are thinking about that, let's pull up the thing, which should be in front of us right now. You should. No, you shouldn't. No, you should. So this is what I was wrong about. It was not between Locke and Hume. That's what I had said in the previous stream, that one of them saw the world one way and the other one saw the world the other way. It wasn't Locke and Hume. It was Locke and Descartes, which makes more sense. When I said it didn't make sense for me to be siding with Locke over Hume on anything, right? And that's still the case. That it was not the case, I was mistaken. It does make sense for me to side with Locke over Descartes, right? That's something that that does make a little bit more sense. For the record, Locke is wrong about pretty much everything, right? The second treatise of government, have we talked about that? Right, just how fucked up a document that is. And we don't want to go on that tangent right now. We'll do that later. I remember I've complained about Locke before, a number of times probably. So it was between Descartes and Locke in how they understand properties in the world, or properties as we understand them. But before we get to here and work all of this out, I really think that there's great advantage to just starting at the beginning of this this lecture that I teach for Philosophy 101. I say teach. It's been, I think, 3 or 4 years since I've had the privilege. I love teaching Philosophy 101. It's way more fun. It is way more fun a class to teach than ethics. But there's much less demand for it. Oh, that's part of why my connection's so terrible. I've got a bunch of stuff that I was supposed to close before stream that I forgot to close. It's eating up bandwidth. Oh, there you go. Good. What was I looking for? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Okay, so let's go through this a little bit. I didn't think that was gonna. We could probably do that. Bring this in some. Yeah, I think that'll do. Okay. Also move this in some. Oops. Ethics as a business major was not focused on being ethical to workers. It was about avoiding risks. Oh, I know. That's business ethics. I'm so glad that I've never taught a business ethics class, because it's what you teach is really pretty fucked up. It really is just about cover your own ass. The whole business ethics course, it's just about make sure to always cover your employer's ass and cover your own ass. So it's not fun. And well, with a lot of the way that ethics classes are taught, right? So as a real quick aside, the first teaching assignment that I had, I was hired to replace some other instructor who had been teaching at that university for 8 years. 8 years, 3 semesters a year. So we're talking about 30-something courses. So 20, we take 25, right? We're talking about thousands, a couple thousand students were exposed to this instructor that could no longer teach. I replaced this instructor because it turned out this instructor, who had been teaching at the university for 8 years, didn't have the minimum qualifications in ethics. They had what had at one time been considered equivalent courses in religious studies. The instructor for whom I took over taught Christian ethics in the fucking classroom like it was an academically accepted way to teach ethics. And this is my anecdotal experience, right? For me, having been exposed to very few universities and very few situations, I have firsthand witnessed instructors teaching absolute fucking garbage, absolute bullshit, stuff that should be shunned. They should be ashamed of themselves, right? And they're not even. But they don't even know that they've done anything wrong, right? Just a quick aside about that. It still racks my brain. Sometimes when there's some professor, Struggle 4, it was a few days ago, there was a professor that they were watching that was talking about Cuba. And the professor that was being interviewed by some news channel was just saying untrue things. And it wasn't just that they were untrue things. The professor engaged in a whole conversation that was based on pure speculation. Something that any credible academic should have gone, well, wait a minute. Now, we are just making up a whole bunch of stuff, and we can't make any conclusions or draw any conclusions based on this baseless speculation that we are making, which is, but this dude just kept going on. Well, I mean, maybe, and just started thinking up all these hypothetical reasons why the United States might need to go in and have troops go into Cuba, right? Like, what the fuck? You just making stuff up? Because I bet people do. I bet people who stand in front of the classroom, in front of students all of the time, just make up stuff. Ugh. Yeah. My politics professor told me Barack Obama was a socialist. You don't deserve to be teaching that thing. That should categorically disqualify you. Right? You should be laughed out of academia for making such a ridiculous, baseless, senseless, absurd claim about reality. Oh man, like teaching love languages in couples therapy. Wow, what a fantastic example. That it's so spot on in so many ways. For those of you who are not aware, the author of the Love Languages book is a giant piece of shit, major transphobe, major homophobe, just a all around piece of shit human. Yeah, in a fucking public school. In a yes. Yes. Yeah, but they have weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, and that's it. It is. It's about agenda. That's exactly right, Jane. But see, and that's it. It's really hard to understand. That was a history professor. It's really hard to understand how we can still have history professors who don't recognize their own agenda. Or, I mean, it probably is a grifter. It probably is somebody who explicitly recognizes it and is just making a buck. And that's really a sad state of affairs that, but it's also not a surprise that that's the capitalist world that we live in, that all of our narratives are bastardizations of some shill who is just grifting. Cool. Good aside. I'm glad that I get to rant about that, because that shit still pisses me off all of the time. This is something that I've talked about on stream before. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about doxa and gnosis. They're ancient philosophical terms, but there's a reason why we still talk about them the way that we do. Bill, give me just 1 second. There we go. This time of day, the crack in the curtain just, it gets me right in the corner of the eye, and it makes it impossible for me to see the screen in front of me. Okay, so, I can't see this. I can either see this or chat. That's not a good compromise. So let's try, and hopefully this is, and that's kind of sized correctly, but we'll make it make do. Well, that makes the text all shitty. Windows. Come on, dude. Sometimes Windows is so useless. Sure, that's what I want. I don't understand why I can't do the thing I want to do. Wow. Sorry, y'all. I usually don't have this many technical difficulties just trying to get a fucking window to open, but for fuck's sake. Go away. Okay. More or less, I've got this back where I want it to, want to have it, but we'll just have to figure this out here. Let's do this. Let's move chat over here. Let's move chat. Since moving the other thing is impossible, let's move chat. Yeah, story of my life with Windows. Why is it so bad? Windows, why do you suck so badly? Basic functionality, come on. All right, so the ancient Greeks thought of knowledge in a few different ways. Doxa, gnosis, and episteme. These are the three primary categories of ancient knowledge. And so this is derived out of a conversation that Socrates is having with Plato that involves Aristotle. Even though that's not how it happened, right? But that's how Plato has cast this. So this comes primarily from Plato, but it involves late Socrates and early Aristotle in the understanding of knowledge. This is knowledge in general, is broken up into three categories. Isn't this bad with 48 gigs of RAM if you can afford the car payment? Yeah. It's the AI. And that's true, the not enough RAM. That's probably very true too. So with Doxa, Doxa is common belief or opinion. That is not to say that doxa is not a reliable form of knowledge. It's a kind of knowledge, and we'll talk about its reliability. Gnosis is what's experienced firsthand. You have a Gnostic experience of the world. That is, what you experience in the world is what you know. You know concretely that which you have experienced firsthand. So we can talk about doxa and gnosis. I know that the Eiffel Tower exists. I have never been to the Eiffel Tower. Right? I've never been to France to see the Eiffel Tower. But I know that it exists. I know that it exists through doxa. I don't have a Gnostic experience of the Eiffel Tower. I have a doxa experience because other people have seen it. They have taken pictures of it. I've seen it in movies and in TV shows, on postcards, but I don't have firsthand experience of seeing that thing exist in the world. So I don't have Gnostic knowledge of the existence of the Eiffel Tower. But I know that the Eiffel Tower exists because of doxa, because there is common knowledge in the world about its existence that I can accept as knowledge. Episteme is much more complicated, right? And so it's the reason that the ancient perspective is valuable is that it demonstrates that we can have competing conceptions of knowledge which seem to be equally true. Which is something that we don't have a problem with in this chat. We've talked about this a number of times, right? That people can have competing ideas, and both of those truths, even if they're mutually exclusive, both of those truths can be true at the same time. Remember the breeze example. So Plato gives this example of two people who are standing on a hilltop and experience a breeze. And one says to the other, heck, that breeze sure is chilly. And the other says, no, it's not. It's very refreshing, right? And so we have two competing experiences of the same phenomenon. So how do we understand truth out of these varied experiences? Doxa and gnosis allow for such contradictions, but episteme will offer truths which are more reliable, as we will see when we get to Descartes. So we have appearances, perception, and sense data all seem to inform our knowledge. But how reliable are these? If you and I can have different experiences of a breeze, for example, or different experiences of a table, does that mean that there's no objective truth? And so this is just the definition of objectivity versus subjectivity. I'm not going to patronize you with going through that. The difficulty of subjective truth, is that we do not have immediate experience of the world. This is a word that I use all of the time. Probably every time I've streamed for the last 8 or 9 streams that I've had, I have mentioned our mediated experience of the world. We do not have immediate experience of the world. And this is the word, this is that I keep using, this mediated versus immediate experience of the world. Immediate means without mediation. All our experiences are mediated because we depend on our senses to perceive the external world. Use of any tool to better investigate the world, like a microscope, this is referring to Bertrand Russell, does not reduce the complexity of this, rather only adds further mediation. So, and this has to do with the, I didn't get it as, yes, gnosis is the root for agnostic. Yes. Right. And that's what it means. What to be agnostic religiously is to say, well, I cannot have a first-hand experience of God's existence, but I can't disprove God's existence. It's to remain agnostic about the existence of God, because we can't have a Gnostic experience of God. So agnosticism is to entertain the idea that it's possible without accepting that it's true, because you can't have that experience, right? Yep. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. Good. But I pulled off to talk to I was going off on oh right. Bertrand Russell. This is referring to the correspondence theory of truth, which Jane, you've brought up before. And I'm not sure if you're a proponent of the correspondence theory, but roughly, it says that true statements are true when those statements correspond to states of affairs in the world, which can be confirmed by multiple other people. This is, oh, you can't see this. So I've scrolled back up to the previous slide. This has to do with Bertrand Russell's table. So Bertrand Russell talks about that how we get correspondence, right? If you have 8 people all standing in a room around a table, you will have 8 unique perspectives of the table. And those unique perspectives might vary, right? They are going to not necessarily agree on the color of the table, or on how smooth or rough the table is, or how shiny or matte the table is, or how bright or dull the color. Like that, there might be disagreements about some of the characteristics of the table. Right? There will be disagreements in how those people all come to understand the existence of the table. But they will all concur that such a table exists, right? So there's this correspondence that we get from our experiences with each other in the world. Welcome in, DJ Che. It's great to see you. I really appreciate the raid, and I really appreciate getting to see you. Hope you had a good stream, and I hope you are having a fantastic day. Right. So this gives us some amount of correspondence. That helps us, Russell says, that helps us arrive at truths that we can accept as certain. But there are a lot of problems with correspondence theory, because we can't get rational, meaningful truths about the existence of the table. That the table exists might, be somewhat incontrovertible, but is it a good table? What is or should that table be for? Right? How do we think about that table? For the table to have meaningful substance, for the table to have substance such that we care about it, we have to make certain kinds of value judgments. And those value judgments are not things about which we can have correspondence. And this is the Wittgenstein problem, right? So Russell is going to say, we've got a table, truth, job's done. And at first, Wittgenstein is going to agree with Russell. And then towards the end of Wittgenstein's life, Wittgenstein is going to come out of retirement and go, wait, we've done this all wrong. And we might all agree that there's a table there, but we have used different rules to come to that understanding. We have different frameworks. We have different value judgments that we have used, different reasonable frameworks that we have used to get from A to B, rather than us all agreeing. It's actually just a more confusing representation of a disagreement. That we now can't talk about because we've pretended that we have correspondence when we really don't, right? And so that's the Wittgenstein problem with logic that happens during Wittgenstein's life. Well, we'd have to arrive at a consensus. Well, it depends on what we are trying to accomplish. And this is, I didn't plan to talk about this today, but I'm really excited to talk about this today. There's a useful division that I sometimes make in philosophy. It's been a while since I've really talked about this at great length. But there is sometimes a helpful division that we can make in academic philosophy as we understand it. And that division is between the Western analytic tradition and the broader, further-reaching and larger historical continental philosophy. So these are not the only two ways to think about philosophy, but they are the two predominant ways to think about philosophy. Analytic tradition is going to be the United States, Britain, and a few other nations are going to be the philosophy and philosophers in those places are going to all be in the analytic tradition. When we move east and we're talking about places like India or Saudi Arabia or China, these philosophies tend to be less analytic, but much more meaningful. And that's one of the resultants that we get from the analytic tradition, is we get lots of good definitions. We get lots of clear boxes, and we know categorically what does fit into that box and what doesn't fit into that box. But what we don't get from analytic philosophy is any kind of meaning. any kind of substance that we're supposed to actually care about. Right, so with analytic philosophy, it's often very focused on isolating terms and whittling down very specific ideas and putting to 100,000 words as exhaustively explaining this thing as much as we possibly can. Whereas opposed to the continental tradition is less concerned with splitting hairs about the particular things and more interested in your relationship to those particular things in the world. How are those things meaningful? Why are they meaningful? Right? And so this is where we where we would be concerned with consensus. Analytic philosophy is going to use consensus in this way. It's comparative to a microscope. I'm not sure how else to think about it. It's a lens that we add to the way that we see the world. Correspondence theory is how I see this. It's a lens that we add to the world that lets our logical statements work with certain states of affairs in the world in a way that those things we understand are roughly equivalent, right? Meaningfully equivalent. But when it comes to what do we do, how do we use that information to give us a moral theory about what to do? How do we use that information to understand what is a good table or what kinds of tables should we avoid making, right? We can't get those kinds of meaningful ideas out of analytic philosophy at any rate, with or without consensus. Welcome in, Eleni. Good to see you. Sorry I missed today's sermon. I was going to visit my sister. She got out of jail. No, good to see you. I hope you're doing well. I hope your sister's doing well too. After getting out of jail. But good to have you in. Welcome in. Oh no, my table is broken. Well, it's right, where was I going next? I was finishing the slide. Right, so I was just talking about Russell and this. That's what Russell's talking about, and what Russell says is that there are logical frameworks, rational frameworks, that there are rational frameworks that we can use, like Immanuel Kant's apprehension of the world, the faculties by which you apprehend that I've talked about before, right? That you can perceive time, that you can perceive numbers and quantities that can be added or divided, right? These are ways in which you apprehend the world. What Russell claims is that we can build rational frameworks for apprehending the world that will get us truth. And what I am saying here is I'm pushing back. Just because we've built this lens for better understanding the world doesn't mean that we have a more immediate understanding. We have a less mediated understanding. The more tools that we use to understand the world, the less immediate our access is, as a necessary consequence. We can't add things to how we see to make our vision less complicated. McDonald's communism? I don't get that. I don't get the comment. In the table example, we'd have to define what a good table is. Right? Yes, yes. That's the problem with any kind of analytic philosophy, is you can't actually make value judgments of any meaningful substance, right? For you to do that, you have to embed a whole bunch of subjective stuff, which makes the capital T not true, right? It makes the truth about it not capital T truth. That's what I meant to say. So that's it. We just give up on truth, is the question I ask my students. But wait, we have not discussed the different modes of knowledge, right? We have not finished talking about episteme. And so that I wanted to set up the conversation so that we can have this doxa gnosis discussion. I think that this is really helpful for us understanding knowledge. And this is why people can have competing ideas about the world, which are both true, meaningfully for them, which doesn't have to do with episteme, which is what we're going to get into next. So episteme is that which can be known through reason. And this is a good example. The sum of the interior angles of a triangle will always equal 100 degrees. Or 180 degrees, excuse me. The sum of the interior angles of a triangle will always equal 180 degrees. And you can go out in the world and you can find a number of triangles and measure the angles and add them up. And if you do that, you will always arrive at the same conclusion. That a triangle will always have interior angles of 180 degrees, no matter what the triangle looks like, no matter what size it is, as long as it's a shape that has three sides, the interior angles will always add up to 180 degrees. So it's testable, right? We can go out and look at all the triangles and put it to the test. It's teachable. If you didn't already know this truth about triangles, you do now. I have taught you, right? It's testable, it's teachable, it's demonstrable, as I have just demonstrated, and it's analytic. With analytic, it means removing concepts from their particular situation and making generalized judgments about those abstracted concepts. So there's going to be some truth that we can lift up out of all of the examples of the triangles that we have experienced in the world, and we can extrapolate from all of those experiences a truth. And that truth is that the interior angles will always equal 180 degrees. Yeah, same. I also love epistemology. That's my jam. Truth isn't fact, by the way. Absolutely, Eleni. Good point. Epistemology. Epistemology is that which can be known through reason. Wait, right. Episteme helps us find axiomatic truth, right? Fundamental truth upon which all other knowledge is founded. So an axiom of metaphysics, for example, things which exist must necessarily have properties. Those properties exist in a place and time. Some of those properties must be essential to that existent thing. But this is metaphysics. These are indisputable metaphysical facts, which must necessarily be true. Things which exist have properties. Period. Right? And this, I would like to refresh all of your memory about the lonely corpuscle conversation that we tried to have at the end of last stream, right? How is it that a single entity can exist in a universe? How is it that there can be a universe in which only one thing exists if existent things have properties? Because it turns out that if there's an existent thing, it must necessarily have properties. And if there are properties of that existent thing, we have more than one thing. Necessarily, right? So anyways, some of those properties must be essential to that existent thing, right? And that's also indisputable. Even if the only difference between one particular thing and another particular thing is its time and place in time and place, right? We might have things that are nearly identical, but if they are not sharing the same time and place in time and place, they are two discrete things. And if they do share the same time and place in time and place, they're the same thing. Necessarily, right? An axiom of mathematics, for another example, the sum of two positive integers will always be greater than either of those integers. Right? This is why we are able to do mathematics, is because this axiom of mathematics is necessarily true. If this axiom of mathematics wasn't true, you couldn't do math. It would be an unintelligible exercise. But it is the case that you can do math, so this must necessarily be the case, and that's that line of reasoning that I just followed there is transcendentalism. For those of you who are interested, which maybe we'll talk about transcendentalism a little bit later today. Most people get confused when you say truth isn't fact. Yes, most people do get confused when you say truth isn't fact. Metaphysical axiom is cool. Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go. And thank you for letting me know if you're on audio only, so that I can, Eleni, so that I can make sure to dictate. Though, you just missed the picture. If you just turned the visual, it's all right. You're not going to miss much. It's just a picture of refraction, right? There's an object in water, and good. I'm glad that helps. It's good to have you. You know, if you're here doing audio, I appreciate that. It's good to have you, Eleni. So there are truths which, it seems, must necessarily be true. There must be some truths which are necessarily true. We can challenge those truths, and when we do, we can understand their validity. But we should be willing to challenge all truths, axioms upon which we have founded all of our knowledge. We should not simply assume they are true. After all, we do not have immediate experiences of the world, and our experiences can be mistaken. And this is a picture of how our experiences of the world are mistaken. Consider the image of the reflection in the refraction caused by the water in the previous slide. To believe that we are perceiving the true shape of the object would be a mistake. We have reason to be skeptical about what we perceive. Skepticism is the systematic method of doubt with the intention of establishing certain knowledge, not a particular kind of knowledge, but knowledge which is certain, about which we can be certain. That's what I mean by certain knowledge. Knowledge about which we cannot doubt, right? I explain explicitly right there. It's been a long time since I've looked at these slides, you can tell. To make assumptions about common sense beliefs that they rely on make assumptions about common sense beliefs that they rely on our various senses to make assumptions about common sense beliefs that rely on our various senses. Seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching. These... Oh, so it's not a complete... We make assumptions about common sense beliefs that rely on our various senses. Okay. We make assumptions. I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time reading this sentence for some reason. Thank you all for your patience. We make assumptions about common sense beliefs that rely on our various senses, like seeing and hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching. These, however, can all be doubted to some extent. We can even have doubt about whether or not we are awake, or that we merely dream that we exist in a world where we are actually a part of some elaborate computer simulation, right? Right. You will recall from the reading, blah, 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 blah. Here we go. That his body is seated by the fire, that he is clothed, that he is in the room, etc. He can doubt all of these things. Descartes is going through the process of doubting all that can be doubted. That his body is seated by the fire, that he is clothed, that he sees the room. He even goes so far as to doubt that he has eyes which see, a body which feels. But where is he if he is not his body? But he does conclude there are some things about which cannot be doubted. For whether I am awake or sleep, 2 and 3 together always form 5, and the square cannot have more than 4 sides. I can doubt whether or not I'm awake. I can doubt my senses. But whether or not I'm awake, squares have 4 sides and triangles have 3. Necessarily, right? That must be the case, regardless of my other senses, or regardless of other ways in which I might be mistaken. What do you think about the cult of opinionism? I'm not that familiar with it. I'll check it out in just a minute. Axiom: reality exists. Well, I think that reality exists. And I think that we can make that assumption in the same way that Descartes does, actually, because do we talk about that here? Yeah. Because I'm looking at the wrong thing. That's why I don't see it. I cannot doubt that there is a doubter doing the doubting, right? I cannot doubt that there is a doubter doing that doubter about which I cannot doubt that doubter exists. That doubter must exist somewhere in some time and place. Must, right? And that time and place is probably in a world. Right? So we might have questions about the nature of that existence, and we can question whether or not it's a simulation. We cannot question whether or not our consciousness exists. It does. And we cannot therefore really question the world, the existence of the world, which must exist for there to be a consciousness which exists. As we understand it anyway, right? Cult of opinionism. Something I haven't really heard. This is cult of opinion, where everyone thinks they're right. Huh. I'll look a little bit more into this. It looks to me like it's actually a joke. I don't understand how this can be a coherent philosophy. The cult of opinionism. But I'll do more digging into that, and I'll look into that it more substantively and get back to you on that, Eleni. Yep, cogito ergo sum, exactly. I don't deal in absolutes. America is very hyperbolic. Whenever someone says no one believes this, they are unknowingly or knowingly lying. Right. I mean, I would say that that's true. We can't say that no one believes or that everyone believes anything. Both of those claims are highly sus. Okay, so for us to arrive at certain knowledge, Descartes argued we must reject our experiences of the world and rely solely on pure reason. We cannot rely on anything that we see in the world, says Descartes. This means that we must be born with innate ideas. And for those of you who have ever taken a Philosophy 101 class, this should be familiar. I teach my class way differently than anybody I've ever seen. But there are things that are going to come up in any Philosophy 101 class, and this is going to be, I think, not necessarily, right? But I think that this is one of the things that would pop up in pretty much any Philosophy 101 class, is that Descartes argues that we are born with certain innate ideas. They're a priori, from the former or from before. And this is as opposed to a posteriori, which is knowledge that we gain from experience. So a priori knowledge is knowledge that we have, according to Descartes, in our minds before we experience the world. A posteriori knowledge is knowledge that we gain after having experienced things in the world. We have within us a priori knowledge. We know intuitively, for example, this is according to Descartes, we know intuitively, for example, that a triangle has only 3 sides, and therefore, when we see a shape that has more or less than 3 sides, we recognize it is not a triangle, is Descartes' argument. We experience a posteriori knowledge. We learn, for example, that all yield signs are triangles, but not all triangles are yield signs. Right, so Descartes believes that we are born with an innate understanding of numbers and of shapes. There's certain other things that natural processes that we understand as well. But these are the things that help us understand axiomatic truths that must be true, and they are knowledge, Descartes says, that we must have before we were even born, before we as conscious beings begin to perceive the world. Descartes' model for skepticism presupposes, however, that we are born with innate ideas, an assumption about which he is not sufficiently skeptical, is my claim. This presupposition is rejected by Locke. Locke argues that when we are born with a blank slate, a tabula rasa. So this is the big controversy from Descartes' innate ideas, a priori knowledge, and Locke's tabula rasa. I also reject the idea that we are born with innate ideas. I think that's a foolish idea. But I mean, Descartes' wrong about most things, right? He got cogito ergo sum correct. And I've talked about this before. He got the conclusion right. But how he gets there is completely ass backwards. It's completely unreasonable, and it certainly doesn't logically follow. He's correct about the conclusion. How he gets there is just wild. I don't deal in absolutes. Oh yeah, I already read that one. We do have innate instincts, but I don't think those are ideas. Yeah, and I'm not sure. Well, humans do have instincts, so yeah. I was going to push back on that some, but I don't know why I was going to push back on that. I already know that. Yes, we have some kind of instincts, right? a child, as soon as it's born, knows to suckle, knows how to suckle, right? Doesn't have to be shown or taught how to do that. So there are certain kinds of things that that we do pick up instinctively, but that's not the same. That's not the same as ideas, right? Right. I almost skipped this thing. From this viewpoint, then, the tabula rasa, all knowledge must be learned through experience. In Locke's epistemology, the mind is passive and the world impresses knowledge upon us. So this is the part that I was getting to in last stream. We are one of the few animals that can go against instincts. So can dogs. That's because some people think humans are domesticated. I would say that humans have been domesticated. America is a people farm. Most countries are people farm. We are the resource. You're kind of like earlier you were talking about people could implement a law to take off clothes in public, but wouldn't even want to. Right. I think that was last stream that we were talking about that, but yeah, absolutely. We would want to. We understand the world a certain way. All right. So this brings up a question of causation. For Descartes, we are born with innate ideas by which we apprehend a passive world. So we have an active mind, and the world itself is passive, which seems very much like what I was arguing, I believe. It's not, and I'll have to clarify that, but that seems like that's what I was claiming last week. For Locke, we are born with a blank slate upon which an active world impresses knowledge. So Locke argues that our mind is passive. The world informs us and our ideas and our knowledge. For Descartes, the world is passive and our ideas, our knowledge informs what we perceive in the world or how we perceive the world. With Locke argues that the world has the properties and impresses upon us. Right? So I wonder if anybody could guess well, no, because I haven't given you enough information. I haven't given you enough information. Remember something you say and take this seriously because you talk like a teacher? Well, it just so happens. I am a teacher, but absolutely. So let me just go on to the next slide. Let's just move on, and then I'll clear things up in a minute. World cause knowledge, right. Does the external world cause knowledge, or do we? Is the question that I pose here. Does the external world cause knowledge, or do we cause the knowledge? Maybe some of you might be able to guess what my real answer is on this. Anyways, epistemologically speaking, how is it that we are so impressed? Sensation, and this is continuing on Locke's idea. So everything on this slide is all John Locke's philosophy of epistemology. Epistemologically speaking, how is it we are so impressed? Sensation is the cause in us brought about by the powers of the external world. So the powers exist in the world and impress upon our passive brain. Like the PSR, this is the principle of sufficient reason. If you're not familiar with that, don't worry, I'm going to explain it on the following slide. Like the principle of sufficient reason, we recognize that we have some experience, and there must be a cause for that experience that we experience, right? When we see a state of affairs in the world, that state of affairs is always necessarily caused by some other effect. This is the nature of the universe, right? When there is a state of affairs which exists, that state of affairs was caused by some previous state of affairs which brought that state of affairs to exist. Likewise, when you have experiences of the world, those experiences of the world must then necessarily have a cause as well, right? There must be a cause for all things that we experience. Ideas, perceptions in our minds, not innate ideas, but rather are combinations of our experiences. So what Locke is going to say is that we have experiences of the world, and that we can use those experiences of the world as intellectual building blocks that we can use to construct new and creative ideas. The idea of a unicorn is knowable because we have experiences of the ideas which make up what a unicorn is. Unicorn is a horned horse. If we have seen horse and horned animal, we can combine those two and imagine what a unicorn is or would look like, right? And this is something that we do to produce new ideas. Quality, essential attributes, a power to produce ideas in us. Oh, right, the quality of the world. So Locke is going to argue that the world itself has properties, but we cannot have experience of the properties that are true of the world itself. But we do not have immediate access. We only have mediated access through our senses, right? Which means that there are qualities of the world that we perceive, but these qualities are secondary. They are not the qualities that are in the world themselves, according to Locke. That there might be a difference between the way that the world is and the way that we perceive it, but whatever that primary qualities, whatever those primary qualities of the world might be, we don't have access to. So, truth, value, and knowledge are presuppositions, affect our view of the world. Our presuppositions include these assumptions, beliefs about truth, knowledge, and value, and presuppositions are foundational assumptions. Right. Beliefs about truth, knowledge, and value, presuppositions are foundational assumptions. Again, it's been a while since I've been through this. This is not how I would organize the information anymore on this slide, but anyways. Inference is reasoning from one set of principles to another. Every state of affairs must have a reason, cause, or a ground. This is the principle of sufficient reason, like I just explained on the previous slide. This particular state of affairs has a reason or cause because every state of affairs must necessarily have a reason or cause. In the deductive argument above, the conclusion logically follows from the premise. Presupposing the first statement is true, the second statement must necessarily be true. Bicorn. Okay, that sounds good. Should come back in an hour. I'll see you in a little bit, Eleni. I hope you're well until then. But how do we know the premise is true? How can we be certain? Right. Based on the conceptions of epistemology as espoused by Descartes and Locke, we can break up knowledge into two distinct categories: rationalism and empiricism. This is a conversation we haven't had on stream in a long time. So these two ways of thinking about the world break up philosophy into two distinct schools of thought. And it gives us rationalism and empiricism. So rationalism is faith in human reason's ability to give us certain knowledge of reality itself, despite the fact that reality is beyond our immediate experience. And empiricism is an insistence on the data of experience, or of empirical data, as the source of all knowledge. Right? And these are two different approaches that branch out even further for those of you who want the this is materialism over here, and then intellectualism is the extreme of rationalism. Materialism is the extreme of empiricism, right? We don't need to really go into that. Do I want to continue to talk about this? No, because that's not really. No, that's not helpful. No, what I want to do now is clarify the position that I was trying to make, because as I was saying, I believe that what we perceive from the world depends on our epistemological understanding. It depends on our reason. It depends on our perception. What we perceive in the world and how we perceive the world cares about our feelings. The facts that we perceive in the world care about our feelings. And how we feel about things changes the way that we understand the qualities of the world. But my viewpoint is not in support of either Descartes or Locke. I think that Locke is more correct in their analysis than Descartes, right? The idea of innate truths, of a priori ideas that we are born with and that guide our intellect. I believe that that's unfounded hogwash. Right, that's nonsense on stilts. I don't think that that's a reasonable assertion. So how is it that we come to have knowledge of the world in a meaningful way? Yep, here we go. Hey, it worked that time. Somehow magically. Mind is emergent from matter. Yes. Yes? But it's not that simple. There's more to it. Yes, but there is more to it. Right, so if we this is one of the later lectures. So the first one is week 4, and I think this is like week 7. So this is much later, several weeks later in the course. So this is not what I wanted, not the Nagel thing. And not solipsism, but we want, right, what we want is this. No, not that, but this. So, the Merleau-Ponty is one of my favorite phenomenologists. Phenomenology is going to look at the concerns raised by rationalism and empiricism, and is going to yeet those concerns out the window, because they actually don't make sense, right? Well, yes and no. So there's still going to be a chicken or the egg question. There's going to be a chicken or the egg question, which comes first. But it's not that Descartes is wrong or that Locke is wrong. They're both kind of right, but also both kind of wrong. Consciousness, people are not simply minds plus bodies. Consciousness must be viewed as two indivisible parts, acts of consciousness and the objects of those acts. So, consciousness itself must be viewed as two distinct but indivisible parts, acts of consciousness and the objects of those consciousness. Previous accounts had mistaken the act of experiencing an object as the object itself. There can be no conscious act even without an object. There can be no conscious act. If I am conscious of something. There can be no conscious act without, right, there can be no conscious act without a subject. Only one person can perform my act of seeing a thing, so anyone can see that thing. So intentionality is our directedness out towards the world. There's a continuous relationship that we have to the world that doesn't have any separation or distinction. Consciousness is an emergent phenomenon of brains. Yes, now we're getting there, coupled with the matter and experience, right? So it's an emergent phenomenon from the matter coupled with experience. These two things come together. In a way, consciousness is a process of attaining the world through perception. Consciousness is not something that you have. Consciousness is something with which you engage with the world non-stop. So when we're trying to cast our mind's eye onto our own consciousness, we run into this difficulty. Because it's the faculty with which we perceive. It's like the eye trying to see itself. It is the faculty with which we understand the world. Our understanding. And our understanding isn't something which is apart from the world or apart from us. It is indivisible from us all the time. And also indivisible from the material world all of the time. Our judgment is a circular relationship. It is an ongoing process of development. So, consciousness is the process of attaining the world through perception. So this is a dialectical body-mind synthesis, a way of being in the world, or a way for a self to be in themselves. I'm using Heidegger's language here, but also some of... no, this is not Wittgenstein. This must be Heidegger. I'm pretty certain that this is Heidegger's language. Being in the world and being in themselves. If I experience, therefore I'm conscious. Bam. Yep. Yep, that's it. That's actually got it, for sure. For sure. So we do not exist solely in our minds or in our bodies, though we do exist in these places too, right? We don't exist in our minds, but we don't exist in our bodies only, though we do exist in both of those places. And we exist in the world too. And this is something that's sometimes kind of hard for people to get, but the advent of the internet actually makes this, I think, a much easier concept to believe. That you exist in the world, right? And don't think that I mean time and place, though that is true. Necessarily, you exist in a time and place. But you also exist in the world. You exist in that I know who you are, whoever you are. You can type things into the chat and then be here. You can be here. And you exist in here, in my mind. Not just in the world, and not just an idea that I have of you. You exist in my mind, in this relationship. If I know you and refer to you, and you are a part of my experience of the world, then you exist with me. Our existence is shared together, and our truths are formed off of each other. Yes, exactly. We exist in both simultaneously, and in all of these places simultaneously. In our directedness, our directed relationship to the world. So, I don't think there's much else past this. This is really where I want to hang out. So this is, and I'm in the way of something. Hold on, let me move me. Good. So we've got over here our personal history, our culture, our values, and our language. So before we get too complicated with all of these ideas, at some point you are born to the world and you have some kind of history. You don't have any knowledge of that history, but you have parents and you are in a time and place that had a time and place before this. So there's a history of the country in which you live. There's a history that is true for your parents that determined them and their lives. And all of these things come together to form your mind and body, the thing that navigates the world through time and space, which extends its consciousness out and finds objects in the world, objects of attention. When you perceive objects, those objects inform you. Right? So it's not necessarily the case that that perception exists only in the stuff, or that perception exists only in the mind. It's a little bit of both. The world has qualities, but some of those qualities we can't know. We don't have immediate access to the qualities of the world. We have a mediated access to some of the qualities of the world, which inform our intellect about how we ought to go about formalizing this body and mind dualism. We experience the world and get feedback about us, about values, about truths, about morals. We extend our attention out to these things in the world that we recognize. And as we do, we are shaped by them. The experiences that we have inform us and helps inform how we see and understand the world, right? So there are properties which exist in the world, but we don't have access to those properties necessarily. There are properties that we come to understand as faculties of our apprehension. And when we reach out with our intentional arc, we do so intentionally. Our attention, we haven't had a long conversation about attention. But when we reach our intentional arc out into the world, we're doing so on purpose. And this is why it's important for us to try to take a look at our pre-judgment judgment. Because the attention, the intention, and attention that we exert out into the world is intended. It's directed on purpose by our attention. And our attention is something that's trained. So, for example, I might have brought this up. The gorilla phenomenon. Did I talk about the gorilla phenomenon on last stream? That there, I'm trying to think of the term for the, I wonder if I looked it up. The gorilla experiment. So there is a well-known experiment that was done with diseased tissue. I can't remember if it was a specific medical field or if it was an array of different medical professionals across different fields. I'm sorry, I don't remember, but maybe once I start talking about the study, it'll start to ring some bells, or somebody can do some research and find out the real thing. But they had medical experts whose job is to identify diseased tissue. Look at a series of slides with tissue to identify diseased tissue. And there's something like an 84 confidence rate that most medical professionals in a field who are trained to identify diseased tissue, that there's, I think it's somewhere in the mid 80s where they have a pretty good confidence interval at identifying that is diseased tissue, that is not diseased tissue, right? But the study that I'm talking about wasn't interested in how well medical professionals identify diseased tissue. It was interested in how many of those medical professionals identified that there were pictures of gorillas on the slides that they were given. And an alarming number of those experts who are correctly identifying diseased tissue as opposed to non-diseased tissue are doing so without even realizing there's a picture of the gorilla on the tissue, on the slide with the tissue that they're examining. But this has to do with our confirmation bias. The kinds of things that we are looking for determine the kinds of things that we see. If we are not looking for a gorilla, we don't see the gorilla. Or the reason why it's called the gorilla experiment is because this is inspired by a video that some of you might have seen. And the video asks you, there's 4 people, and those 4 people throw a ball to each other. And the video says, count the number of times that the ball is thrown. And while you're watching the four people throw the ball back and forth, there's a gorilla that walks through like they have to throw the ball past the gorilla. So it's hard not to see the gorilla, but if you're just counting the number of times that the ball's thrown, your attention doesn't recognize that it's there. So what I'm trying to draw attention to is the way that our attention works is intentional, and it is trained in a certain kind of way for us to receive and understand certain kinds of information, which means that what we see in the world and how we see the world is determined by how we think and how we understand, right? How we make judgments. How we see the world depends on how we make judgments. And I want to tie this back in to the video of ICE agents murdering Renee Good. We watch that video of ICE agents murdering Renee Good and see ICE agents murdering Renee Good. But people who are in the MAGA cult literally don't see that because of how their attention is trained, because of the way that they understand. The way that they understand the world determines what they see in the world. In a very powerful, very strict philosophical sense. If we aren't trained to look for something, we are going to miss said something. Right, exactly. And that's the primary reason why I still consider myself an anarchist first and foremost, and a communist second, because I am constantly looking for oppression. I am constantly looking for unjust hierarchies, because I want my brain to be trained and practiced at understanding the world in a specific kind of way, so that when I see certain things in the world, unjust hierarchies or injustices in general, that I immediately pick up on those, that I'm trained to see the gorilla, right? I'm not just looking for the things that conform to what I expect of the world. I'm looking for other things which violate how I understand the world should be. Good. Just checking the weather real fast. Oh no. Okay, so the snowstorm not here yet, but there is a massive snowstorm that's quickly approaching. I can see it. I can see the snow. It'll probably be here within the next 20 minutes to 40 minutes. So maybe it's not a bad idea for us to wrap this up. We're going on 2 hours, which is about my usual run time. I kind of got, just getting freezing rain. Most of the country is just getting freezing rain. The freeze is the worst part, right? You get the wet, and then the freeze, and then more wet, and then freeze, and it makes it really dangerous and icy. Yeah, ice is dangerous, y'all. Well, our weather has been so wild. Last week, when everybody was getting below zero temperatures and getting hit with all of those storms, I'm walking around in like a tank top and in a button up. It really, the weather here last week was fantastic. Beautiful, you know. But it's going to be snow and coldy for the next few days. It's about to get real nasty here. Yeah, it was a massive W. I wish I could have spent more time outside last week. Oh, that reminds me, before I let everybody go. Speaking of having the time, I had the time to read philosophy last week. I did read the next chapter in Between Past and Future by Hannah Arendt. The chapter that I read is the one on authority. And I've got some things to say about it, but I don't know what they are yet. There's this kind of embarrassing thing that happens with philosophy sometimes. So I've read this chapter twice now. I've read the whole chapter beginning to end twice. And I understand about 80% of it. But that 80% is all stuff that I understood before I read the chapter. There's 20% of the chapter that I've been reading Hannah Arendt. I read Hannah Arendt. I know a thing or two about reading Hannah Arendt, but I'm just not quite sure what's going on. There's some parts of the chapter where it's the really important points that Hannah Arendt is trying to make, and I've read them and reread them and reread them, and there's something that's not clicking. So I'll probably watch videos. I don't like watching videos on philosophy, but sometimes there's only so many times you can reread the same thing, right, and get new understanding from it. So I'll probably watch some videos and get some other people's perspective. There are a few typos in the chapter, which I think is really unusual. There are, is it 7 or 8 chapters? 8 chapters in this book, and I've read 5 of them. And there have been no typos that I've detected in any of the other chapters. But this one on authority seems to have a few, and those typos seem to be in the worst places for trying to understand this really complex, nuanced idea that Hannah Arendt is trying to convey, and I still don't even know what to tell you about it. So there's that. It was fantastic for me to be able to read philosophy. I love it when I can take a little bit of time and read some philosophy, but is it in their prose? Yeah, but I don't think so. It's I believe that, how to explain it? There's a gap. I'll explain it this way. So, in a lot of ways, right, good. Let me explain it this way. Hannah Arendt writes analytically because she was in the Western tradition, and all of her contemporaries were analytic. For her to get published, she had to write analytic philosophy. But Hannah Arendt has a lot of substance. There's a lot of oomph in it, lots of meaning and value, substance that is typically not in analytic philosophy. And I believe that the signpost that Hannah Arendt leaves for the reader, as the reader is going through the text, there are signposts that are supposed to signal to you, the reader, pay attention to this in this particular kind of way, pay attention to this in this particular kind of way. And a lot of time authors will do this by referring to other authors. And I think that there might be some gap in my knowledge about some of the other authors that she's talking about, so that she is giving signposts to indicate that I'm supposed to think about a certain thing in a particular way, but I miss the signpost because of my gaps in knowledge or understanding about who or what it is that she's talking about. I think that's the problem that I'm running into. Yes, so some underlying concept I'm missing. I think that there's something that Hannah Arendt assumes I know, right? Or believes that I ought to know, or it believes that I'm going to make certain connections, and I'm just not making those connections. So it's not that big of a deal. This happens in philosophy. So I'll spend some more time delving into it, because it's going to be really very relevant to the conversations that we've been having. And it's obvious to me that I'm going to be able to tie it into all of the stuff that we've been talking about for the last few weeks. I just don't know how yet. So that's down the pipes. Oh, we had below 0 for the last 3 weeks. I didn't realize it was that cold there, Matt. But somebody mentioned that to me the other day. I was talking about different places I was looking. And the New England area is an area that I've been looking at. That's not a complete shithole, shit stain on the country. Most places are terrible, but New England's not so bad. But when I mentioned that, somebody was like, "Well, they've had it's been really cold there, below 0. Wow. Snow never hardened outer 3 weeks straight. Well, but isn't that somewhat better? If the snow hardens, it's more difficult to deal with and becomes more slippery and dangerous, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, it's a mess either way, right? That's half a dozen, 6 of the other. It's better. right. Better always depends. Okay, I got and that might be what I'm thinking of. I live in an area where skiing and snowboarding is it's what you do when it snows. So that might be kind of what I'm thinking. Massive winter dams because the snow stayed too long. Oh, gotcha. Huh. Ice dams because the snow stayed too long. I gotcha. Ah. Yeah. Well, it would be nice if you could take that issue up with your landlord and expect that your landlord would do something about that. But since landlords are just parasites, that's an individual issue that you as an individual are left to sort out on your own. Oh, I am my own landlord? I didn't know that you owned the place where you are. Well, then you don't have anybody but yourself. But I mean, if you can't afford to do anything about the insulation, then you can't afford to do anything about the insulation. But congratulations on owning land. It's quite a heck of a accomplishment in this economy. Oh, that's awesome. Bought the house I grew up in. That's super cool. Wow. Place was falling down. We put over 100K into it. Well, but it might be nickel and diming you, but at least it's nickels and dimes. If you were to try to buy a property now in this economy, it would probably cost you a lot more. And I don't know how much this is actually assuaging the what you've been through, but you know, it's compared to buying a new property, new house outright. Got a custom kitchen out of the deal. Nice. Good. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be looking for a raid target. Let me wrap this up, and yeah, not too many people get to pick out their own kitchen. That's very true. That is a really good point, I think. Let's find somebody to raid into. I might, Matt, let me take a look and see what we've got. If there's somebody easy that pops up that I want to go into. Ooh. How do y'all feel about music? I generally like to stream from politics into politics, but well, maybe not. Maybe I changed my mind. Maybe I've rethought about it again. Yeah, I'm gonna find somebody doing some politics. Or, well, no, if you've got a suggestion, Matt, I'll take one. Hannah Reloaded is pretty cool. They're on. That chap is on. They do. Yeah. Let's go into Hannah Reloaded. I don't hang out in their stream very often. So I don't have a lot of experience with their stream, but Transgirl is on too. That's a good point. Maybe we'll hop into Transgirl. There we go. Let's do that. I like your suggestion. I like your suggestion, Matt. I appreciate that. Let's get this raid going. Good. All right. So we didn't finish wrapping up all of the stuff on ontology, but the next stream we might be close enough to wrapping it up that I pick a different topic. I'm kind of undecided. Tomorrow is going to be a very important day for me figuring out stuff. So after tomorrow, I'll have a better idea of what I'm thinking and what I might want to do, what's going on. So keep an eye out for that. Here's my counter. Something. Oh, there it is. That's why it's not. Okay, there we go. Good. It was so great to see you all. I'm so glad that I had enough internet connection that I was able to stream and hang out with all of you beautiful people, because this was a fantastic stream, great conversation, and appreciate you all being here and taking part in it. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and until the next time I see you, be excellent to each other.